Welcome to an episode of Delayed Offside. And like most episodes of Delayed Offside, the roulette of hosts has kind of rotated again and again. I was under the impression that Ryan was on tonight and that I knew Sanjay wasn't going to be, but yeah, it was a lot of convoluted discussion trying to figure out who's going to be on part of it when and who's going to take part in such things. And then in the end, it didn't matter because basically we still ended up only having two people anyways. But unlike the hurt Calgary fan Sanjay, Adam and I are here, even though our team has been swept in the last round, to discuss a couple things about that, but also some of the random hockey news from around the NHL and the continued battle of the playoffs. Right now, Tampa Bay is playing the New York Rangers, and the series is tied 2-2, and the game is tied 1-1. We'll keep you updated on that, but by the time you watch this, that game will be long over. So it's just one of those interesting things occurring right now because there's just been a lot of shuffling and shifting occurring between those two teams. And honestly, it looked like New York was going to run away with it. And then it's looked like Tampa is going to run away with it. So we're going to wait and see how this one plays out while Colorado sits fresh, waiting for what happens next. With that, I don't know if there's anything you want to talk about prior to starting the episode before the edit scene, but if you have something, I'll give you the floor.
Welcome to Delayed Offside.
There you have it. All right, so probably the biggest news to occur, at least for us, and essentially for you if you're Canadian, has actually been the loss by the Edmonton Oilers to the Colorado Avalanche. Now, this series was pretty hyped up off the bat. There was going to be a big showcase and firepower. Connor McDavid, Leon Draisaitl were performing at another level playoff-wise, breaking records, coming in hot. Colorado had kind of been the team that had been picked to go the furthest every year and had finally made it to the third round. And everyone kind of expected this to be like a hard fought, amazing, like game by game battle. And it really had moments, I would say, but it was over pretty quickly. It was a 4-game series, and at the end of it, the Colorado Avalanche moved on, and the Edmonton Oilers did not. We'll just start with, Adam, your thoughts on the series in general. Was it entertaining? Did it deliver? Did it not deliver? What are your thoughts on that? And then we'll break down some of the things that occurred.
Game one for me, I was like, whatever. They lost their first game against the Kings. They lost their first game against Calgary. They lost their game against Colorado. I was like, I'm not worried at all. I never really was worried, oddly enough, until overtime. I thought Edmonton played all right. I thought, and I've heard it from people on the internet as well with the weigh-ins, but I don't think the officiating was great in terms of Edmonton's favor. There were a number of calls that were missed. There was that slew foot on Draisaitl, which whether it's a slew foot or not, that's a penalty. That's a tripping penalty then.
Yeah. See, that was the thing. We had a long discussion about whether or not that was a slew foot. And I thought it was a slew foot because of where his leg was positioned and that he pushes him back. But technically, according to Ryan, the reading of it is that you have to trip them with your foot. So literally I could stick my leg behind you and throw you backwards, but because I'm not using my foot as the leverage point, it shouldn't be a slew foot. Yeah. However, like you said, it was still a tripping penalty and it wasn't called. And that was the weird part. But continue.
And it was blatant. And, it's going after an injured player. And we saw what happened with Kane, with Kadri's hit. And then we also saw the same kind of dangerous hit on Zach Kassian from Gabriel Landeskog. And it was called a hook.
Yeah.
Come on. And then, I just thought that the officiating was really lopsided and weird. Weird might be the best way to put it. Edmonton put up a good fight. I just don't think they have the goaltending to get this team across the finish line. And that's ultimately what it came down to. It came down to like a horrible giveaway that tied up the game. He could get back into position, bad play on the wall, bounces into a ref, and then an Avalanche player gets it, and they ultimately score. And that's kind of what happened game after game with them through the playoffs, not just in the Avalanche series, but you needed that. You could tell that there were guys that were injured. You could tell Nurse was not 100%. He was losing battles and making plays he wouldn't normally play that were pretty weak. Draisaitl obviously limping off the ice. I was really happy with where Edmonton got to and how they finished. To be
You're supposed to just talk about what you thought about the series, and literally you've just digressed into this whole thing about why we lost and other excuses already. Like you already had time to get there. You were just supposed to be like, it was a fun series. There was lots of entertainment. You're like, well, this guy happened in this, and this is another reason why we lost, and this is another reason we lost. I think the obvious reason is that at the end of the day, like the Edmonton Oilers did not have the depth that Colorado did. Colorado lost their second line center in Kadri very early here. I shouldn't say very early, game 2. Or game 3, I guess. Game 3. Yeah. And
yes, that's right.
And the guy that stepped in for him, you didn't even bat an eyelash. He had an amazing game as a second line center and so forth. And that depth really propped up. I do agree about the goaltending. Mike Smith had kind of been this little bit of a wild streak because he would play horrific and then he would play lights out. And even when he was playing well, he still was guilty of some terrible goals, right? So Calgary, the dump in from the behind the blue line all the way into your net. Against the Kings, it was the throwing the puck straight up the center. And Colorado was the same thing, throwing the puck up the boards. He's not making the easy play, but making the big desperate dagger play and putting themselves in bad positions. And I honestly, if you watched it, they showed save percentages. It was like 934, 900, 907, and then it dropped again. And it kept dropping by like roughly 30% a series. And just by the end there, you could tell it was not a good choice.
Yeah.
And they were in too deep, and they decided that was the horse they were tying themselves to. And it pulled them off the court with the cart, right? Like there's so many things that occurred, I think, at the same time, but I think it really, the depth and the goaltending, like there's no Makar on the Oilers, and they just seemed healthier. Their good players seemed healthier too. And I think it all just wound up being that. But I don't know if it was as entertaining as I hoped it would be. I thought the Battle of Alberta was a little more entertaining.
Yes.
Personally. And I remember it's like, oh, we want more of that. I was glad that was done in 5 games because after those 5 games, I can just sit here and mention it to Sanjay for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter, right?
Yeah.
And that's way better. But, man, the Colorado stuff sucks. It's funny, though. Flames fans or just people that hate the Oilers just crawling out of the sewers as soon as they started to lose. Game 3, when the Oilers lost, I get text messages from people I hadn't talked to in, like, forever being like, hey, your team – yeah, you're right. But why do you care? Like your team's been done for a while. So why are you talking to me about this?
Oh yeah. No, it's funny. Like there was a kid at school and he's like, oh man, the Oilers, go Avs, go Avs. And like, it was in the hallway today. And Sylvius is like, you're still on this? You're still on this? Like, get over it.
Yeah. There's one kid, he's a Flames fan. And every time we see him, he's just like, he's doing a sweep motion. And I'm like, 4 more than your team got, buddy. 4 more than your team got. And they were like, we're pulling stuff in. He was walking in. I was like, oh, hey, there you are. And then I just like closed the door and walked away. Someone else let him in, but I just did it as a joke. But yeah, they just come out of nowhere. Like, one Flames fan like avoided me at work after the Oilers won. And I was like, you know what? It sucks when your team loses. So I ain't saying anything. But man, as soon as we were losing the Colorado, texts like, hey, look at this. Hey, what's going on here? Hey, what's wrong with that guy? I don't know. He's on one leg and he's still producing at like an elite level. So whatever. Right now it has to feel like it's Colorado's cup to win. Hey.
Yeah, really. Looking at them I hope they win it. I hope they win it because we'll be able to say we lost to the cup winners.
Yeah. There is something about that, like when you lose to a team and they go all the way, as opposed to losing to a team that's out the next round, right?
Yeah, exactly. So, but you got to think that they're up. You've got guys grinding it out on their team that have been in the playoffs, constantly knocked out in the second round, finally breaching that wave, and like, I don't know, they deserve it. They deserve it. So,
do you think the long break hurts Colorado or helps them?
I think it helps them. It gets Kemper healthy, and you get a couple other guys that might be banged up that gives them that rest. If I'm Colorado, though, I'm nervous because Kemper and Francouz are not as good as either of the goaltenders they're going to be facing in Vasilevsky or Shesterkin. So that's one thing that would make me very nervous.
But have either of those teams? Well, actually, no. the Rangers face some pretty potent offense in the Penguins, and Tampa faced some pretty strong offense in the Leafs. But I don't know, like it's such an interesting time, right? And like I said this to the one group chat here before Ryan bailed on us as always, still sulking. That Tampa Bay, like if you listen to the radio, all they talked about is Vasilevsky gets better every round. He gets better every round. Every playoffs gets better every round. So it's hard for you to brag about how good the Leafs did against him when he's been statistically better every round, and you probably faced him at your best chance to beat him. Yeah. And they didn't. So that's just that. But I do think it is problematic in some sense, because if they go in hot, this team is good, and they just have an ability. Yeah. Tampa just has an ability to figure stuff out. It knows what it needs to do. So it's hard to write them off. But if they lose to the Rangers, man, I wouldn't bet $1 on the Rangers winning the cup. I'm sorry. I don't see how they're going to do it. Like, I really don't.
No, it's weird too, because it's been a very, Zibanejad and Kreider kind of thing. Hey, and I guess Fox has been kind of in there, but like, I don't know, their depth just doesn't seem like it should be as good as it is.
Yeah, like they do. They got some great players, but they're starting to get injured throughout this playoffs.
Rome's out, yeah.
Yeah, and like I just think I don't know, like I don't think anyone bet on the Rangers getting this far. So I think it is a really huge accomplishment for that group. But I just feel like it's not their year. And I don't know. Like, and I think that's the thing. The story is written. I think it feels like it's Colorado's year or Tampa. And if Colorado wins by stopping Tampa from becoming a dynasty, well, then that's a huge story. And if Tampa becomes a dynasty, then that's a huge story.
But right? isn't wouldn't you call them a modern day dynasty already?
But a dynasty by official terms is 3 wins in a row.
Okay. So then,
like in a modern day term, 2 wins in a row is huge. Let's call a spade a spade.
So would you call
2 wins in 5 years is huge?
Yeah,
like right? It is.
I would consider the Penguins a dynasty. Like they had 3 cup wins, although it was a couple of years
apart. That core is relatively stayed the same. So I would say so. But I mean, it depends on definition. Proper definition is 3 years in a row. That's why Stan Fisher always says the Oilers aren't a dynasty because they didn't win their 3 in a row. Mm-hmm. The Islanders are the last official dynasty. Yeah. And Tampa has a chance to be the last official dynasty if they win this year.
And I would also argue like Chicago would have been dynasty.
Yeah, I would too. Kings LA. As well.
Yeah.
But once again, we're lowered the standards to 2 wins because no one wins that many anymore. So
and the league is so big now. It's 32 teams as opposed to 6.
Yeah, it's true. With the Edmonton Oilers loss here, there's a lot of changes that are going to be coming or occurring. There's been some conversation that maybe Mike Smith is going to retire, and the way his contract is structured, it would just be off the books. So that's kind of nice if he retires. If he does, though, you run into the fact that you're probably not going to be able to find a goaltender who's going to give you the same value at that cost. But there are some goaltenders available. Darcy Kemper, you said, hasn't been as good. And then I know Ville Husso is potential, or him or Binnington, because it depends what the Blues decide to do. There's another goalie, Marc-Andre Fleury, and who else, whatever else happens, right? So there's always a chance. And one of the conversations that I find really tough with the Edmonton Oilers is everyone's like, well, you need a goaltender. That's your problem. Okay, but this conversation has been happening for over 3 years now. Yeah. When it was Talbot and Koskinen, it was like, you need a goaltender. By Talbot, it's Koskinen. And then it was like, oh, no. You know what else you need? You need a veteran. So there's Mike Smith. Well, Mike Smith, who we're riding with. Oh, well, we're going to sign him again. And then you still need a goalie. Oh, we didn't get one. We're going to sign him again. So the conversation's just constantly been going over and over again. It has not changed. And so when people are like, well, they need a goaltender, I'm like, they've had 3 years. They haven't been able to do it. They lost out on Markstrom. They lost out on Kemper. So at some point here, like it's got to change, or there's just time to move on, and you have to accept with what it is. I think it's hard to accept that Stuart Skinner is going to play 60 plus games. I think it's hard to accept that if it's him and Mike Smith, that you're going to have a super confident group. I just think that's tough. Yeah. So I'm not sure what they're going to do there. But what are your thoughts on the goaltending position moving forward? What do you think is going to happen, and what would you like to see?
What I'd like to see is maybe if you're going to honor that contract, I would like to see Mike Smith retire. I think, he's given it everything he's got, and it's just not enough anymore. And he's too old. The game has outgrown him. And we saw that in the playoffs too at times. Like he looked like he looked like a generation behind. If that makes sense. I don't know. Or does he go LTIR next year?
No, that's not going to happen.
Right? Exactly. So
you can't do that. The thing is, everyone's like LTIR, but you need a doctor to sign off on it. And it's not Toronto where they can just pick any flipping doctor and be like, here's your seats. Where do you want to sign? Right.
yeah.
At the end of the day, most teams aren't able to force guys into LTIR situations unless they're actually done.
Yeah.
And the guy just went off like playoff run into the third round. You're not going to be able to LTIR him. So I don't even think that's an option.
And then, I think about, you brought up Marc-Andre Fleury. Do we want another old goaltender? Do we? Like, really? An old... I like Marc-Andre Fleury.
Marc-Andre Fleury would be better than Mike Smith, even on a 1-year deal.
I would agree with that. But the guy I would target and the route I would take is sniping another player from Toronto to have success past the first round and going with, maybe Jack Campbell.
I never thought of that as a possibility until Ryan made some joke about it. And then I'm like, I like that for two reasons. One, he's still a good goalie.
Yeah.
And two, it would upset Leaf fans, and basically all the players that they love would slowly just be coming over to Edmonton.
Yeah.
So you don't even need analytics because you just take those players eventually. And I posted it online to the one comment thing where I was like, I would take Jack Campbell. And I meant it because I said mostly for the drama.
Yeah.
And one guy's like, that's overrated player. I'm like, well, who'd you want? He's like, Ville Husso. And I'm like, okay, guy who lost the starting job in the playoffs, has had 1 year under his belt, plays behind a better defense. Overrated. You don't know what he's going to be either. But I think you have a little bit more of an idea about Jack Campbell at this stage and a little bit more idea about Marc-Andre Fleury. So
he played solid all the way through that first round series too. That loss, not on him.
Yeah, a little bit on him.
You know what? He played solid though. He made some huge saves for the.
Yeah, he's a good goalie. That's the thing, right?
I
don't know if he's the piece to get. I don't think he's the piece to get Toronto there. Maybe though, that might be the issue, right?
Yeah, put him in the right place with the right guys. Like, what did Hyman say? I thought it was going to be good coming to Edmonton. I didn't realize how good it would be.
Oh, is that what he said?
Yeah, he said it's exceeded my expectations.
Yeah. Kane had a big comment thing today, but we'll talk about that in a little bit.
Yep.
But it is kind of interesting. Like, I think my preference would be for Mike Smith to retire too, but then I still think you're in trouble here to try to find some other stuff. There's a lot of a lot of fire around the Oilers right now, because going into last season was probably one of their biggest off seasons ever. They had $60 million in cap space. They had to make some moves that were going to better the team. And I think if most people were to grade the team's moves, they wouldn't have given it a high grade at the end of last season. They picked up Zach Hyman, who most people loved, especially at the contract. They picked up Cody Ceci and Barry, who people did not like. They picked up Mike Smith for 2 years, which people did not like. I'm trying to think who else they signed. They picked up Duncan Keith for $5 million, which people did not like, and a player, and held up their second. And they also traded away a fan favorite in Ethan Bear for Warren Foegele. So I don't think you would grade them as a great offseason. And they had a good season in the end. I would say at times it was very touching.
January wasn't looking good.
No, December was always awful for the Oilers, and it was really awful for the Oilers this year. So that was bad. And then, they got third round, and you're like, wow, some good moves here.
Kane, but Kulak.
Right, but Kane fell into them. Kulak for sure was a hell of a grab.
Oh, unreal. I was unsure about that one.
You know who else they picked up was Broussard, and he never played a single playoff game. Yep. And he's probably done, right? Like he wasn't very good. He got like one goal. But going into the offseason, there's like a lot of like excitement, I guess, around it, or thoughts around like, what are they going to do to make this team better? But don't you, how do you feel about going into it? Because I feel tepid. Like, I am not excited in the sense that I don't think Ken Holland's going to like drop a bunch of hits. He's not like some DJ who's like, here's my new album and it's all bangers. Yeah. He's a guy who makes some tough decisions, and I'll toss one at you after, but like, what are your thoughts about going into this offseason? Like, are you confident in the GM? Are you confident in the team? Do you think that they'll be better next year? What's your thought?
It's going to be interesting. I mean, the core is not going to be touched, and they now know what it takes to win. So I think that's a little contagious as well. So you got your Draisaitl, Nugent Hopkins, McDavid, and Nurse for sure, right? And Hyman. We'll throw Hyman in the core because he now is a part of that. But, you don't know how guys are going to mesh with others or how they're going to play with others, right? There's going to be some tough decisions that the Oilers have to make. And I don't know how I feel because, Duncan Keith at times looked a little lost. Like that pairing was either really good with him and Bouchard or awful. There was a lot of times I looked at them and I was like, oh God, what a giveaway. Horrible.
He does. He honestly would have games where you'd be like, oh, he's doing so good. Like, or he looked really good tonight. And the next time you watch him, be like, yeah, you're not very good right now.
Yeah. So that's kind of where I'm at. Like, are you looking for like a really old veteran guy again that you're just a fan of? Like, I don't necessarily think that's the answer all the time. And I think
seems to be what Ken Holland,
Ken Holland, seems to go that way. Right. Which is like, I really like CC. I hope we keep CC.
CC had turned out way better than I would have thought. I don't think he's getting traded. He has been good. Yeah.
And I would like to keep Kulak. I think Kulak fit well up and down the lineup. Like when Nurse was out, he stepped in. He was good. I'd keep him. He wasn't like your Slater Koekkoek who came in and was kind of verge, right? He played with anyone and he played well. How many times?
He played top 4 minutes in Montreal though too, right? Like he's not right. He wasn't like Slater Koekkoek who was good one series.
Third pairing Chicago. But at the same time too, Baron, whenever there was no Kulak in the lineup, pre-Kulak, and Barry was on the ice, how many times were you like, oh, Barry. Kulak comes. How many times were you saying that?
A couple, but not as much. You're right.
Not nearly as much, yeah.
I do think Barry elevates for playoffs. I think he's way better in the playoffs than he is in the regular season, but he's still not perfect. The problem with Barry becomes
and slow.
He occupies. I think he's actually a decently fast skater, actually.
Yeah.
I disagree with you on that completely. Okay. He is legitimately could work as a forward. He's fast enough. I think the problem with Barry is he occupies a spot that is going to eventually become Evan Bouchard's.
Yes.
How do you put Evan Bouchard in there if Barry's always standing there? Yeah. And they signed him, and I don't really understand their logic as to why. Maybe they just thought Bouchard wasn't ready yet, or I think part of it was that Larson left, and they didn't want to have too much of a turnover on D. But now you're in a situation where that guy is a problem in the sense that he's stopping somebody cheaper and younger from getting there.
Right.
And there's lots of talk that he has positive trade value, that there's lots of places that would like to sign Tyson Barrie to have him for that money. And so that he's probably an asset that's going to get moved for cap space reasons. And I think that's probably your best bet at this stage.
Yeah.
Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, I would. He's movable. We've got depth on the blue line. We've got guys that could come in like Niemelainen, Broberg. They're looking good.
For a 6-7 that rotates out or whatever. Yeah. I think so too. And I think Kulak should be a priority. He was very good for the Oilers.
Yeah, I agree.
I don't think Duncan Keith's going to retire, but I know that that's one of the hopes, but I just don't see it happening.
Yeah. How many more years do we have him for?
One more year at $5 million. Yeah. And so that's actually next year's a tough year, but the year after that, the Oilers get a lot more money. Yeah. But that's an interesting year too. Other things, Jesse Puljujarvi, honestly, the radio, everyone's talking about it, that he is probably gone. I'm in the camp that I don't understand why that's true. He's a guy who was like 6th on your team in points, and he only made like 1 point some million. I think the qualifying offer to keep him for a year would be 1.4. I do not know how you don't just qualify that guy for 1.4 million and ride him out another year and then offer him a contract or let him walk then. Because at 1.4 million, why would you trade that player away? I don't get it. He's one of the best defensive players they have. You don't have to love that he doesn't score yet, but I still think that that's something you can fix.
It's going to come. It's going to come. Like, have him practice his shooting. Have him practice, like, the passing and tipping with McDavid, like, hitting corners and stuff. Like, I agree, Baron. His defensive play was great. He keeps the puck in the offensive zone and creates chaos when teams are trying to get out of that zone. And and he's long, like just that reach. He's
a big guy, and he's one of the few super big guys that moves well they have.
Yeah. You keep him. I don't know. Something sits funny with me. Like I'm like, does McDavid like him? I get the feeling that McDavid does not like him.
Well, I wonder too, like if, and I'll say this as a side note, maybe Puljujarvi doesn't want to stay. Maybe he wants out, and maybe the media's like, Low Tide on TSN radio has been talking about for a long time that he figures Puljujarvi is gone. The signing of Kane is basically the heralding that Puljujarvi will be gone, and all these other things. And I thought he was right then because he just made way too much sense, his argument. And I still think that that's happening. But I'm looking at, and I think Puljujarvi is a player that was drafted 4th overall. So he's not scoring like Matthew Tkachuk. So he's not as good as Patrick Laine. That doesn't mean you don't have a very good player. Maybe he shouldn't have been drafted 4th overall. That's not his fault. That's the team's fault.
That's a scouting. Yeah.
Yeah. And he's still productive for you. And you were like, what would you say? Like every goal is worth like roughly 10 points is worth $1 million, right?
Yeah.
So he made 1 million, like 1 point some million last year. But how many points did he have? And he only played 68 games too. So let me just take a quick look here because I'm going to pull this up.
Yeah.
But he, playing last year on the Oilers, let's see, where is it? Database. In 65 points, he had 36 points. That's a $3.6 million roughly value for like half price.
And
so
why
the hell didn't you pay that?
Well, and you're paying for a player that's scoring at a 0.5 pace.
Yeah. Like, but why wouldn't you want that? He also doesn't get any power play time anymore. He doesn't get PK time. So that's standard time, basically. I mean, I know he did get power play time for a while, but
yeah,
I just don't get why you'd let that go. And I get that he has value, so you might want to move something else. But man, it's going to cost you in the end. And I'm not saying Yamamoto doesn't deserve to get paid, but like Nielsen had a really good breakdown of it today on TSN Radio as well, where he's like, Puljujarvi was a plus player. Yamamoto wasn't. Puljujarvi's a bigger body. Yamamoto isn't. Puljujarvi was able to score early on, but slowed down after he got sick. Yamamoto couldn't score at the start, but scored now, right? Like,
can I add one more?
Sure.
Let me add one more. Yes, Puljujarvi doesn't take offensive zone penalties.
Yeah.
Yamamoto takes a lot of offensive zone penalties.
Yeah. And there's a lot of that conversation about a bigger body looks like it's lazy and a smaller body looks like it works hard. And I do think that some of that is true as well. But to me, it's just one of those weird things. And like, I look at this team and I'm like, I think he's gone because I cannot trust that this organization will make the right choice. Yeah. And they might regret it one day, you know?
Yeah, I agree. I just think like I loved seeing him on the power play in front of the net.
Yeah.
Big body there going for garbage. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know if he just doesn't fit in with that group. You just kind of get that idea, you know?
Yeah. I could see that too. And I do wonder if like the media has been saying this for a while because they've known it's coming. And that's what I believe. I think they've been saying, oh yeah, he's going to leave, blah, 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 blah. And I think they're saying it because they know it's true.
Yeah.
And I don't know if some people want him out of town or not, but I think they're saying that. Another note of a player leaving, Evander Kane put out a post today. Thank you to all the fans who supported me this year. To everyone who doubted me, I thank you as well. To my Oilers teammates, I appreciate each and every single one of you for welcoming me in and embracing me in such a genuine way. I'm grateful to have had an opportunity to play with such a committed, hardworking, and loyal group of men. The Oilers are a first-class organization and such a great staff from top to bottom, and I thank them for giving me the opportunity to play for such a historic franchise. To the fans of Edmonton, I thank you for treating my family and I with such kindness and respect. Thank you, 91. When you hear that statement, what comes to your mind?
He's taking the money and running.
That's what I thought too. I was like, he is gone. And he is saying, hey, guys, I enjoyed it.
Thank you for showing that I could be a team player in this league.
Yeah, and allowing me to make tons and tons of money. And I think he's gone. And he could have produced an amazing amount of points on the Oilers this next year, but you are going to have to pay for those points.
Yeah, and I think I saw a tweet somewhere that anywhere else he would have to sign, it would be an 8 in front of it. But if it was in Edmonton, it'd be a 7.
Yeah, like he'd give them a discount. But the problem is that
is there room?
They don't have $7 million.
Yeah.
Right? Nurse is going to get a $3 million pay increase. Koskinen's off the books. So that money basically shifts to Nurse. And even then, like, I think he was good. I really do. But I wouldn't want to give him a long contract.
No, and it makes you also think, Baron, like who could slot in there? And, you know, we saw Holloway dress for the 4 minutes he played in the last game, and you know,
they basically benched him after a while. They were like, you're not playing.
It's just like, get a taste, buddy, here you go. But you got to wonder if they're maybe putting a little bit of hope in maybe Holloway coming in.
Holloway, I understand. Like, if you can run your centers as McDavid, Draisaitl, Nugent Hopkins, on Nugent's wing, you can throw Holloway. He's getting a legit second line center and third line minutes, and probably second line minutes realistically, and has a chance to score. And if he's better, he can move up and whatever.
Yeah,
you have some leeway to play around there, but you don't have a player like Evander Kane.
No,
so the name that was tossed out today on Oilers Now was Josh Anderson. Yeah, that's how a lot of people feeling. That's how a lot of people feeling.
And I saw a tweet too that Matheson put out or something like that. I think it was Jim Matheson quote that it would be like a pick and like Xavier Bourgault, who's like looking unbelievable.
For who?
Anderson. I wouldn't take that.
Why would you do that?
Give up that prospect.
You know what? You're going to have to give up prospects eventually. You're going to have to give up players eventually.
Not that one.
That doesn't mean you have to give up that one and not.
Benson in a pick.
Benson's not going to get traded anywhere, dude. Benson's walking to free agency.
Okay, good.
Like, nobody wants him. He was on waivers. You could have had him for free. So how would you trade him for someone?
Yeah, I don't know. Like, even like someone like maybe Cooper Marody.
No, Cooper Marty's also a free agent, dude. He's walking away. They're not going to re-sign him. Like, he is done. At least he's done with the Oilers.
Tell me about Brad Malone. Is he still on the books?
Brad Malone is an old guy.
Yeah, I like Brad Malone. I loved him. I was like, when they put him in, I was like, good.
I think Brad Malone was more serviceable in a specific role than other players. I don't know that he should have necessarily got in ahead of other guys, but I think it's because the coach knew him. But he wasn't going to do much production for you either.
He did almost score.
Damn. Yeah, but almost score, who cares?
Yeah, I know.
You know, you almost have a point in the NHL. You don't have a single point in the NHL, Adam. You almost have a snack up. You don't have anything, right? Like, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
So I don't know, man. I'm just thinking, being honest with you, I like Brad Malone too, but I think you're better off to sign him to your AHL team and have him service there. And if you need to pull him up, then you can throw him on a temp contract or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, fair. Well, who do you see them bringing in? Who do you see them bringing? I think Josh Anderson would be.
I'll tell you, if Bob Stauffer's saying Josh Anderson, then they're looking at Josh Anderson. That's the truth. The guy's an Oiler insider. He works for OEG. And if he says that, then that's where it's going. Yeah, but I would not give up Xavier Bourgault for it.
I wouldn't either. No, I think that'd be a mistake.
Yeah. You literally lost your goalie of the future. Konovalov was supposed to be like the number one goalie for the Condors next year. He terminated his contract. He's going back to play in Europe. You passed on Wallstat, so you don't even have a goalie there now in that pipeline, which means you have to draft one this year. So I don't think that the fact that you gave that player up and you took this other player, I just think he's got too much value. I think you have to look at your other places. Maybe Carter Savoy is ready to play, and maybe that makes a difference. But man, Bourgault he's got to be up there for you. He's like crushing the OHL playoffs right now.
You got to think he'll be playing in the A next year.
Yeah, and think of Josh Anderson as a guy who's injured all the time. Just seems like a bad choice. But I don't know what other power forwards are available right now. But I just don't think you can pay Evander Kane that money unless you're going to do a 1-year deal. And then you still got to move out a bunch of money somewhere. Even if you move Barry, $3 million, Cassian, another $3 million, $6 million. Okay. That's a little bit of cash there, but you still have to sign those free agent or those UFAs as well. So it's going to be tight. I don't know how they're going to do it. So they got to figure out something here.
Yeah. I just don't think he's signable right now for the Oilers. I
don't either. And I think he's basically saying goodbye. Now, if he comes back, it could be big. Like, it could be really interesting for them, but man, I just don't see it coming. There's a lot of Oiler talk for today, actually, which is good because usually the two people that complain, they're not here. And I don't know. I think Ryan's like a closet Oiler fan. He always pretends. Well, I don't know, actually. He always pretends to cheer for the Oilers. And then when he gets an opportunity, he cheers against them.
Yeah.
Like, he's always like, oh, I love I love Hyman. He was such a good player. So I'll cheer for Edmonton now. And then he's like, Bunting is so much better. I'm glad we have Bunting. And then the next time, that reminds me, like, click, subscribe. Because
Yeah.
if I don't say it now, if I said literally when I say his name, it literally traumas me to say like, click, subscribe. And I've done it to
PTSD.
myself. He really hasn't said anything.
Heal on traumatic stress disorder.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, I feel like when he was like the playoff spell of Alberta, he's like, I'll cheer for Calgary. Why?
Yeah.
Why? You're gonna be sad in 5 games, buddy.
How to make you feel.
Yeah, exactly.
How to make you feel, Pelon.
I will say this: it is hard to care once your team's done. Like
Yep.
I'm the Rangers stuff. I haven't watched a single game. I
Oh,
haven't.
Aaron, I finished the weigh-ins and I've had a bunch of Avalanche fans actually comment on them. And a lot are like, man, I like your unbiased like takes and like really enjoyed watching it. Can you do this for the remainder of the playoffs? And I was like, oh, when your heart's not in it,
Yeah,
even
it's
like that, and I canceled my cable. So
yeah.
I don't have it.
Well, that's the other thing too. Like it's summer. I really enjoyed this playoff run. It's like the
Oh,
most
so
fun I've had watching hockey.
yeah.
But now that it's over, I'm like, I can do other things. Like Shelby and I can like go watch stuff, do other things, whatever else, right? Go for walks. Whereas before it'd be like, oh, can we go do this? And I'm like, game's on. I can't do that. Like when I did have to miss it, at least I only didn't miss really till Colorado series when they started losing. So, but yeah, I don't know. It's just kind of nice to have that little bit of break. But we'll see. Like I am excited for how well they played. I have a hard time betting that without Kane, they're going to be as good next year. Their
Yeah.
goaltending might be better. Their defense might be better, but their offense, I just don't see it. If you move Fogle and Cassian and those 4 contracts, you have money, then maybe you're going to get something done. But even then, you still got lots of holes you got to kind of plug here. And I just don't think Ken Holland has shown the creativity to really do it, not to do it well.
Yeah.
Personal opinion.
Oh, I agree. Old dog. No,
Old dog. No new tricks. No. We were talking about some other stuff occurring in the NHL. So some other news that's kind of happened here is actually really centered on the Boston Bruins, which is kind of a weird talk, but they've had a couple of events pop up here in the last little while. First off is the surprise firing of their coach recently, which I think caught a lot of people off guard, including the coach, when he has the GM come and visit him, when Don Sweeney comes to visit, and Bruce Cassidy gets told, hey, we're firing you. So that one came as a shock. And I don't know, like talking to other people who are more attentive to the Bruins than I am, like they really like the coach. The coach has had an extremely positive record over these years. The team has performed well for the most part. Are you surprised by this firing, Adam?
Yeah, Boston's, perennially contender in a really difficult division. They're making the playoffs. No, and I don't think there was much really done to help his team in terms of moves. Really, there was always the lingering, trade Jake DeBrusk. They brought in Taylor Hall, but really, what else has happened much? Like they brought in Ulmark, but
one of the things that constantly gets pointed out is that their drafting has not been very good.
Horrible.
Like they've blown it on draft picks. And yeah, you got a player out of, at the end of the day, you got a player out of Jake DeBrusk.
Yes.
But you probably didn't get the player you wanted to get, right?
And they had 3 picks in a row.
Yeah. And so like the problem becomes that they haven't exactly given their coach a lot to work with. And it's an aged core and it's just getting older. But I don't know, like I just generally like I'm surprised that that's the change that they went through or went for, right? Like,
wouldn't you want to maybe take a look at your scouting team or maybe upgrading there, because obviously it hasn't been working so hot.
Yeah. I think the other part that's come out of this here is that there's also another rumor now that Pastrnak is potentially up for trade by the Boston Bruins, which is pretty interesting since he's probably the second best player in the that draft year. It probably goes Draisaitl, him, Ekblad, I would say. And So it's kind of a shock that that player, they're willing to part with that player because he's so dynamic. He's such a good point producer. Like, you are not replacing that or winning that trade. So I don't understand the thought process behind it. I know he doesn't have a lot of term left, but if you let him go, you are not
You're in full
doing
rebuild.
better. Right. That's exactly it. So I just think that's a huge give up. So I'm really kind of shocked that that's been part of the conversation. Now, if I was a different team, I would try for all my heart to get that particular player. Boston is a pretty cap strap team as well. So I think that's part of the problem. Let me just take a quick look here. I want to see how much.
Yep.
Yeah. Pastrnak has 1 year left at 6.666, 6.667 mil. So he is due for probably a pay raise, and they really do not have a ton of room. But you have to figure that they'd be able to move other people to get that money. How many do they have for buyouts? Nothing. No, I don't know. I don't understand how they can't. Why they let that player go? It doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah, unless he was like, I don't know, something with the organization wasn't sitting well with them, or I don't know, or maybe Boston is thinking like if Bergeron retires this next year, they're just blowing it up.
Maybe, but they have Sweeney for another year at $1 million. They're definitely overpaying Allmark at $5 million, but that's their problem, not mine. Mm-hmm. I don't know. I always pick Boston to be a team that's not going to do very well, and then they always do well. So it's like, why would you not keep trying? I guess I don't know. Just something feels wrong there, and it's weird that they're firing the coach. If they're trying to trade away the players, and the one consistent thing over all these years of somewhat mediocrity has been their GM.
Yep.
Like, he's in charge, moving on. So I don't know.
Yeah, no. Yeah. I agree. You should look in the mirror.
Yeah. Fire yourself. Yeah. I don't know. That's really, that's all I think we have this week. I don't have much else.
Yeah. We don't have a preview for the Stanley Cup final because it's not there yet. So
yeah, Sanjay is not here to just keep talking aimlessly about his team like it's good. Where do you think Johnny Gaudreau goes? There's a question for you. There's our Sanjay hot question of the day. Where do you think Johnny Gaudreau goes?
Edmonton.
Calgary?
Edmonton. He had amazing chemistry with McDavid. The All-Star game, what was it, 5 years ago? I think he's sick of losing in Calgary and ready to, jump on over.
Yeah, I wonder if he stays, man.
If he doesn't, he's going to the East Coast. And my guess would be Jersey, Philly.
He's always linked to Philly because he liked that one post. Jersey could definitely use him. I don't know. Like, I really don't. I don't know if he's leaving or not. Like, he talks like he's staying. Media's always talked like he's leaving. But I think it's always tough with American players. You never know where they want to go.
Well, that's it. And, I don't know. You got to take what they say at face value because otherwise they wouldn't be saying it. Why would they be saying it?
Yeah.
Next
year moving forward, which team do you expect to be better in the West?
I do expect Edmonton to have a better season. I think that in the West. Let me just take a quick look here, Baron, at the standings.
I think Coyotes will be trash. I don't know about Vegas anymore. I think they've made too many changes, and the team isn't as good as it could have been.
I agree. So, I think they're going to be a floater again. But here's what I think. I think Vancouver is going to be better next year.
Yeah, I think Vancouver is a good choice.
Boudreau was a massive boost for that group, and they really flourished under him. So I would think that maybe LA becomes a fringe team. I think Vegas falls out, Vancouver falls in.
I could see LA increasing. A year of Eichel might make a difference too, but I just don't know. Like Pastrnak, like there's a lot of tight cap stuff going on there, so they might be a very different looking team by the time the season starts. But I really could see the Kings getting better. I could see Vancouver getting better.
Yeah. San Jose.
San Jose, they're stuck. They're another year older of Carlson, who's never been as good since he got injured. You're another year older of Brett Burns. Like, I think until those guys are moved off and you get some cap space, you're stuck there too. Like, you don't have good goaltending, so that's tough.
And I would also look at, like, in the West, Winnipeg to push again. Like, I think they got rid of Kopp too. Hey,
I'm curious to see who their coach is. If they get Barry Trotz, I think there's a good chance. But if they don't get Trotz, I'm not sure who the hell they're grabbing, and I don't know what that's going to look like. Yeah. They have had one coach of significance and one coach of insignificance in their tenure since they returned to the league, right?
Yeah.
And I think Trotz would be huge for that team, and their defensive stylings, and their hard hitting, and the goaltender would probably love it. And they could be a boost team, but they're also kind of in a weird spot here. Like, they have to sign Dubois. They gave up Laine. Like, there's lots that's gone on here in the last little bit.
Yeah.
Oh, I could see them needing to make some changes, some other changes. Oh, Scheifele's gone. It sounds like everyone figures Scheifele's gone, that he doesn't like it there, and he's kind of being a little bit of a bitch, for lack of a better term, about. So it sounds like he's gone, and if he's gone, you're probably gonna not get a great return, or the return you get won't be ready yet, right?
Yeah.
So I don't know. It's gonna be an interesting off season for sure.
Oh yeah, it'll be fun.
And free agency kicks in less than a month.
Deadly excited.
Yeah. Well, with that, I think that's enough for the episode today. Sorry about the pauses and the thoughts and the Oiler talk, but screw it. If you're not going to show up in the episode, you don't get to say anything, right?
Hey, successful season.
Sanjay.
Very successful
season. Yes, I would say. And like I said, I've enjoyed the ride. It sucks to lose to Colorado, but still one of the top 4 final teams. So.
Hey, man. Are you an unhappy fan right now?
No. I'll be an unhappy fan on July 1st.
Yeah. Yeah.
They signed who? Phil Kessel for $8 million.
No.
What do you mean 8 years, $8 million? What? There you go. Or be some defenseman I've never heard, or who's like just aging away. Like, we got Chara guys. And like, oh my God,
for 5 years.
All-star team. Yeah, for 5 years. Yeah. Honestly, I think Duncan Keith plays one more year, and they re-sign him for basically nothing in the last year. For like, he'll play like Chris Russell money. Yeah, and Chris Russell's probably done because he's injured all the time. So, anyways, with that, I'm Baron.
I'm Adam.
Have yourself a lovely weekend, lovely day. Thanks for listening. Like, click, subscribe. Feel free to comment on the things. Reach out to Ryan Pilon specifically and ask him why he's too good for the show. And ask Sanjay the same question. I just kid, but you can do that. It'd be funny. All right. Much love. Bye.
All right. See ya.